Hey, Erin James here with Crafty Housewife Yarns, and I wanted to do just a quick video on really basic spinning. So like if you just wanted to start, and so these will just be some really short basic tips. So anyhow, the first thing is different types of fiber that you would be spinning from. And most fiber, I feel like if you buy it at a store or online, one of the most popular ways to buy fiber is in one of these braids. And this one is a custom dyed one that I got done for a special order. So anyway, that's what this one is. And what you do, and sometimes it works better than others, but the general idea is that you would start at one end, and if you pull it, like I said, ideally it all kind of unravels like this. Sometimes you get an aggravating one, and I don't know what the difference is, where it just like will not pull out. And then you have to kind of, then you just go through and just kind of pull it out, manually. But that's the general idea, is that you pull it all out into long strips. And so then you end up with just one long braid. One long, I always refer to it as like a snake. So one long like snake of fiber. And then you can do what's called pre-drafting, which is very important, especially if you're starting out for, it makes your spinning faster. That was something I learned the hard way. Like I said, I do so much spinning that really making myself do pre-drafting helps a lot. So it's something pretty brainless you can do. I always recommend, especially if you're going to two-ply, it's easiest if you, at least with me, I always split the snake down the middle to start with, because it gives you not an exact, but a pretty easy way to divide your fiber into two even parts. So you can spin one half on one bobbin and one half on another bobbin, and then you can two-ply it together, and you'll have even amounts basically on both bobbins. So then once you split it that way, all you're doing with pre-drafting is you just start at the top, and it's super easy. You just pull it down and you make lots of like little ribbons, and you can really pre-draft it down, depending on what type of yarn you want, as small as you want. And I mean, sometimes it'll get hung up on itself. It's not anything to stress out about. Just the general idea is you're wanting to divide it in half if you're going to two-ply, and then divide the two halves into these little strips like that. So that's pre-drafting, and that is definitely a very important first step of spinning. Second, this is my spinolution pollywog wheel, and that's what I was going to do today's little demo on, because I, one, love it, and I, two, think it is a great beginner wheel. So what I'm going to do here for spinning demo, and you see I've got my bobbins already kind of hanging out here on top of the Lazy Kate. So I'm going to take an empty bobbin, and this is actually some hand spun. This is called your leader thread, and on this particular brand of wheel, it's got kind of like a little clip, and then you can take either commercial yarn, or I literally, the only reason this is hand spun is because I have lots of hand spun and I was lazy and that's what I had. So you take any piece of yarn and you run it under the clip. You can kind of tie it around, or honestly, I usually just kind of put it under like a safety pin. And then the idea is that this is the yarn that's going to establish the twist for your fiber. So make sure you have a leader thread, and like I said, it can be any type of yarn, just regular old nylon yarn hanging around your house. So you put the bobbin on, and then like I said, this is a spinolution, so this is all magnetized. This pops back on here, and what you do is you bring that around, and what we're doing here, and hold on, we're going to, that tension's where I want it. Okay, so what I'm doing here is seeing the twist is now traveling down this leader thread into this. So we've got a lot of twist basically like loaded in this thread. So what we're going to do now is start adding your yarn in. And what I'm going to do, this is, and I will get into the different types. So imagine we pre-drafted like I just talked about. I always start with kind of a thicker piece at first, and I usually will either tie a little knot like this, or if it's, two pieces looped around. Basically, you just need some sort of something like that, whether it's between two pieces of yarn like that, or actually physically tying a little loop. It doesn't, whatever you want to do. And you take the end, or at least like I said, I'm totally self-taught, so this is just what I do. I take the end of basically my pre-drafted roving or fiber, and I usually just kind of make like a little tail and then fold it down in on itself. I mean, it can be super short like that. And then, like I said, see, you're loading the twist, comes down this, and then it starts twisting here. Let's see, I'm trying to get where you can see better without dropping this on my head. So get the twist in there, and then you start drafting backwards. And like I said, I always end up with kind of a little thick, chunky part right here. That doesn't offend me at all. So that kind of is, it's loaded on there, and then you can see it feeds up through here, and then we'll wrap, and I'm getting too much twist here from doing this demo, wrap down onto your bobbin. And then once you know, I may need to adjust my tensions, then you can pull it down like that. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about was, you always, I didn't even know what people were talking about for the longest time, hear about woolen drafting versus worsted, like worsted spun versus woolen spun. And basically what that means is it's two different, that, or it's also, you'll hear it called long pull versus like short pull, and it's different ways of drafting, and it does give you somewhat different outcomes with your yarn. Woolen is more sort of light and fluffy, and that's the long pull method, which I'll show you in a minute. And then worsted is what you think of as more standard, kind of like tightly compacted, you know, tighter yarn. So that's more what you would think of for like commercially spun yarn. Whereas worsted, I mean, woolen is going to be more of the like kind of light and fluffy, like maybe more thick and thin yarn, or at least that's how it turns out with me. So anyhow, let me show you a little bit of both. There's two different techniques, and they're both fun, and they work best with kind of two different types of fibers. Okay, this one would be, and I'm going to end up with two different colors of yarn here. For worsted first, it's what I first learned, and it works best with the like kind of pre-drafted roving in like long strips. So, and I'm just going to do it some like kind of chunkier yarn here so that you can see it on the camera. So the first thing is you get let me get what I've got here, spinning in, and add this in. This is adding, here you can see, one strip onto the next. You just sort of put it on there and then hold it and let the twist establish and then run it down. So anyhow, worsted spinning is just like this, where you're pulling forward with this first hand. See, I'm pulling forward and then kind of smoothing back. It's pulling forward, smoothing back, pulling forward, smoothing back. So I'm kind of controlling the fiber back here with my backhand. And if you were left-handed, you would be doing it this way, to my understanding. So you'd be, you know, but I'm not left-handed, so let's not confuse me. But like I said, worsted, and you can see you're getting a nice, compact, like thick piece of yarn right here. But that's the general idea, is it's you're pulling forward just a little bit at a time. So that's why it's called the short draw method, is, you know, it's a little bit and back, a little bit and back. And like I said, this was the way I learned to spin. And then you control kind of the speed of your feet, and you know, you don't want to get going too fast, and you don't want to get too much twist in there. And you really just, you want to learn to feel, you really can, you can feel like the tension in the yarn. So if you start feeling it getting like too springy or twisty or whatever here, then you know you need to slow down with your feet, and you might even need to, you know, kind of untwist the back, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to let the twist get from here into this, because if the twist gets into this, then this is going to twist into like one big giant piece of yarn, and that's not what you want. So anyhow, that is like I said, the worsted, and it's worsted spin, and that I do a lot of this. So this is a very common and you know, good place to start off making just really basic yarn. Alright everybody, so for this one is woolen spinning, or long draw method, long tail method. You'll hear it called several different things. This is, I've got kind of a little mini art bat for demonstration. Usually you'll see people doing this from either an art bat or like Rollags. And so you can either, like I said, this one's little, so you could just kind of start here if you wanted, but we're gonna normally, like I said, especially if you're starting, I would recommend kind of pre-drafting. So, you know, pull it down into like a strip, but you can you don't have to get it like as thin, or I don't think you do, as you would with worsted. So, you know, get yourself kind of a fluffy strip. And what you're doing with this is, here, you get it going, and then connect it on. And let me move this extra fiber so you can see. Is instead of pushing forward, you're going to let the twist, you're going to pull it back slowly, and then you feed it back in. So see, you're getting a nice long pull back, and you're feeling with this hand the twist, and then you feed it back in. And then you are pulling it back. Like I said, you can really feel the twist in between your front fingers to feel when the twist gets in there, and to kind of keep an eye on the, you know, the thickness of the yarn. So, like I said, with woolen spinning, you can see the fibers are spun this way. So it's like a barber pole. So just by nature, it's a little fluffier and squishier than the, here you can kind of see on here, than the worsted. So the worsted, they're all kind of, the fibers are compact, you know, and tighter, whereas with this, they're going to be more of a spiral and fluffier. So it's just, like I said, there's not a right or wrong. It's just different, you know, different fibers and different techniques for, you know, just a different outcome in yarn. But they're both really fun, and they're both relaxing. So, you know, it's definitely, if you're starting out, I would say start with worsted, just because I feel like it gives you a smaller range of motion with that just sort of pushing forward and pulling back. And when you're first starting out, you know, you got your feet and your hands and you're all nervous about everything. So I would say maybe start with worsted, but then once you get the whole twist thing down, I really think woolen spinning is a lot of fun. So anyhow, okay, I think I have a less weird camera angle now. Those are my basics for spinning. Like I said, a lot of people start off with a drop spindle. I did start off with a drop spindle. I think it's easier to spin on a spinning wheel. I know it's more expensive, so it can be kind of scary to make that leap. But, you know, you can look for like a used wheel or a smaller, less expensive wheel like the one in this video, which I do have on my website, and I am a dealer, so, you know, feel free to ask me any questions about that. I also have another video that compares the Pollywog and the Lewitt S17, which was actually my very first wheel, and is also a great wheel. But I hope that gives you sort of a, like, going from, because I imagine it could be scary to, like, you know, you go buy a braid, and then you're kind of like, what do I do with this? Or you see, like, all the art bats, and, you know, you're not really sure what to do with that either. So I hope that kind of gives you at least a little bit of familiarity with, you know, the different ways you would get fiber, and, you know, kind of how to hand process it from there, and, you know, hopefully that helps. So anyway, enough rambling.